Hello everyone, it's great to see you all again and I hope you can hear me as well. Hiroshima Station is just a few minutes walk away, generally in that direction, and we're here right next to one end of Kojin Bridge. The bomb's hypocenter was roughly on the other side of Hiroshima's downtown, in this direction. It was about 1.9 kilometers away from where we are now. So I know I speak for everyone when I say how much we appreciate Mr. Lee Jong-un taking the time to speak with us today. We'll have some time for Q&A a little bit later in today's program. So please, as you listen to Lee-san's story, think of any questions you might want to ask later. So first, I'd like to ask Lee-san what he experienced here on August 6, 1945. では、リーさん、8月6日にここに何を経験しましたか
？8月6日の朝、色が全く変わりました。黄色みがかった閃光が目の前を走りました。
In the morning of August 6th, it was very different from a usual morning. I saw a yellowish-orange light in front of me.
私は危険を感じて、目と耳と鼻を塞いで、その地面に伏せました。
I thought I was in danger, so I decided to duck down myself and close my eyes and cover my nose and ears.
時間が経ってだんだん明るくなるのを待ってましたけども、その時間を知ることはできませんでした。
I waited, I don't know how long I waited, but I waited and waited until I started to feel outside become brighter.
そこに置いた弁当箱を探したけどありませんでした。
I thought I had my bento box with me, but when I looked, I couldn't find that bento box.
約30メーター向こうに飛んでました。
My bento box was actually flying over there, about 30 meters away.
はい。それを拾ってこの橋の下に走り込みました。
So I picked up my bento box and I ran to the foot of the bridge just over there.
とてもその朝の恐ろしかったことを戦後75年経った今でも覚えております。
It was a very horrifying experience, even after 75 years after the war.
この恐ろしさを二度と経験することのない平和な日本になってほしいと思います。
And I really hope that the Japan or even the world will be a place where we won't have to experience any of those wars.
そして、その光によって私の体をすべてを焼かれておりました。
And with that bright light, my body was burnt as well.
それは顔全体、それから首、足、手、すべてを衣服から出た皮膚はすべてその光で焼かれておりました。
It included my faces, my neck, my hands and limbs. Everything that was not covered with cloth was burnt.
そしてその弁当を拾ってこれをまっすぐ自分の職場に向かいました。
And afterwards, I picked up my bento box and I walked this street straight to head to work.
で職場の同僚が私の顔を見るなり、お前真っ赤になってるじゃないか、お前それやけどだって言われました。
As soon as I saw my colleagues, they told me, "Your face is bright red. What happened? Your face is burnt."
そして SL の軸のオイルを体中に塗ってくれました。
And to cover for my burn, my colleagues took engine oil from a steam locomotive and covered my faces with that oil.
これは本当に痛くて我慢ができなくて泣いてましたね。
It was really painful and I couldn't help myself, but I had to cry. It was that painful.
そして私は防空の中に走り込みます。
And I ran into the evacuation area.
そこで昼ごろ弁当を食べますが、その弁当も美味しくありませんでした。
Around lunchtime, I ate my bento box that I took with me, but I couldn't taste anything.
本当にその8月6日の朝の一瞬を今思い出すと本当に恐ろしいです。
As I remember the morning of August 6th, I still I still feel terrified.
いつも電車でここを通るたびにやはりその日のことが思い出されます。
And even now, as I take this bridge with the train, I still remember the time that happened, what happened on that day.
ありがとうございました。So thank you so much, Lee-san, for sharing what you experienced on the day of the bombing with us. And also thank you to Aya-san, who provided such great translation support. So if you have any final comments, perhaps some more about what you think of or feel when you come here again, we would love to hear that. じゃあリーさん、最後のコメントとして、少しお話しされましたと思いますけど、改めて現在ここに来ると何を感じられますか？
やはりこの核というものの恐ろしさを私は今子どもたちにも証言してますけども、これを世界の人が感じてほしいです。今ウクライナのチェルノブイリ原発の砲撃あたりを考えるととても悲しくて、あれが爆発したらどうなりますか。それと私のここで被爆した時のことを考えると、絶対に核というものがこの世界にあってはならないと思います。
What I feel standing here right now is that how much nuclear weapons are horrifying weapons, and I really wish that everyone in the world will understand and know about this. And as you know, we have a war right now in Ukraine, and when I hear about the Chernobyl, I feel that what if that power plant explodes? It's something that we can never let it happen. And so that I hope everyone will understand the nuclear weapon should be banned and should be eliminated from this world.
ありがとうございました。Thank you so much, Lee-san. So now, our group is going to head back inside for the Q&A. Hello everyone, can you all hear us okay? So now we're here again with Lee-san with some time for a question and answer session. So please, if you have questions, you can start writing them in the chat, and please send them for everyone to see so we can all know which questions have been asked and select ones to ask. So Lee-san, even after the bombing and after the war ended, during Hiroshima's recovery and in the years after, faced various hardships and discrimination for his dual identity as a hibakusha and as a Korean living in Japan. And so he began speaking about his experience of the bombing and his experience in the years after as a hibakusha in 2012 at the age of 82. So as I mentioned, it's time for the Q&A now, and we'll have, I believe, about 15 or 20 minutes for your questions. So please, as I said, write them in the Zoom chat for everyone to see. And we have here off screen, but he is here, we have Kawasaki-san, who is going to select your questions to ask to Lee-san. And same as before, we have Aya here, who you can now see, to provide interpretation. So let's begin the Q&A now. Are any questions in the chat?
I'm still waiting, so don't hesitate to write any questions and chat in Zoom.
Okay, while we're waiting for your questions, perhaps to begin, Lee-san, could you please tell us a little bit more about maybe perhaps the kind of difficulties you experienced in the years after the war ended?
被爆してからですか？被爆してからは戦後のもののない時代を、生きてきましたけども、それは私たちだけでなくてやはり、日本の皆様も戦後の苦しい時代を本当に苦労しながら生きてきたということを覚えてます。
I remember after the war, of course, the situation was severe, so we didn't have many things around us, but it was not just us. It was the whole Japan. So everyone had hardship during that time.
Are there any questions in the chat?
Let's see. I've received. So, how long did it take for you and your neighbors to discover that this was a completely different type of weapons than had been ever used in the previous bombing campaign during the war? 質問はですね、この爆弾がそれまで使われていた爆弾と全く違うものだということを理解するまでにどのぐらいの時間がかかりましたか？
まず先ほどの橋の下に避難をした時に、おじさんたちも 4,5 人来てたんですけども、そのおじさんの中の一人がこれは新型爆弾だって言いました。というのは、そのおじさんは東京とか大阪でいろいろ空襲にあった経験のある方だったと思います。たった1回の爆発でこれだけの被害が出るということはやはり新しい爆弾だったということをそのおじさんは感じたんじゃないかと思いましたけども、私は新型爆弾って言われても全く理解することはできませんでした。
As I experienced the atomic bomb under the bridge where we were just now, there was also a few old men with me, and one of the men said, "This is a new type of bomb," and he probably said that because he had also experienced a bomb in Tokyo as well. But at that time, I had no idea if that bomb was a new type of bomb. But he probably said that because one drop of bomb could destroy so many areas.
はい。Another question. I appreciate Mr. Lee for sharing his experience. How has life been for him after the bombing, and what are some of his advice for the youth? リーさんですね、本当にありがとうございます。その上で、この原爆を受けた後に、その戦後リーさんの生活というのはどういうものだったかということと、それから若い人たちに何かアドバイスがあるでしょうか。今日。
そうですね、さっきも言ったように、戦後の広島、放射能、後に言われることですけども、放射能の危険性とかそういうものの話も16歳あるいの時からでもそういう話を少しでも聞いたことはありますけども、全て核というものに対しての理解をすることは当時全くありませんでしたし、そして生活していく上においても、もちろん私は顔、首その辺りを被爆してますので、ケロイド的なものがやはり少し残ってました。そうするとやはり職場に行くと、私日本名で江川と言いますけども、江川のそばに寄るなと、あれは原爆病がうつるぞって言って、その職場の同僚たちもできるだけ私を避けるような態度があったことを覚えています。ただ原爆に被爆してそして差別を受けるというのが本当に私は18歳まで、国鉄に勤めていましたけども、その国鉄を退職する羽目になったっていうのもやはりそういう、差別の一端があったから私はそこの職場を去ることにしました。そして今私が証言をずっと私の体験を子どもたちあるいは一般の人にも証言活動を年にそうですねやはり1ヶ月、今コロナ禍で、証言活動も今ストップしてるんですけども、 1ヶ月にやはり何百人、年間にすると4、5千人の子どもたちに私の被爆体験を話してまいりました。もちろん、今まで話してきた中でやはり私の実際に橋のたもとで被爆した時のことから、そして被爆による体の、傷、そこにやはり、宇治が湧いてくるっていうふうなことも子どもたちにはパワーポイントを使いながら、お母さんが泣き泣き、その私のウジ虫を取っている場面を子どもたちにもお話をしています。ただ今のやはり子どもたちに話をすることについて、肝心なところはやはり核の恐ろしさ、核といっても分かんない子どももいるかも分かりませんので、原子爆弾の恐ろしさというふうに話を変えて今表現をし、そういう思いをしております。
As I was still living in Hiroshima after the war, of course we heard a little bit about radiation effects, but at that time we had not much knowledge about it, and I was 16 years old. And how radioactive materials can affect human health, we didn't understand a lot about these things. And as we spend our daily life, as I had been affected by the burns, the heat, my face and neck was burned, and I had that scar on my body. And my Japanese name was called, I was used to call Egawa, and my colleagues would discriminate me by saying that, oh, you shouldn't go close to him. If you go close to him, you get, it's contagious, so you get a atomic bomb radiation sickness from him. And I had been discriminated like that. I was working until 18 years old at the National Railway, but because of those discrimination, I had to leave my job afterwards. And currently, I am doing these testimonies to children and adults. Unfortunately, it has been stopped in real person since the COVID pandemic has started. But I've still been doing these testimonies to about 4,000, 5,000 people per year. And as I showed you today, where I got exposed to atomic bomb at the foot of the bridge, I explain about that situation, what happened on that day, and also the scars that I got, and how maggots start to crawl my body, and how my mom was crying and taking those maggots away. Using these PowerPoint slides, I would always explain these experiences to them. But my final message always is how it's really important to tell these nuclear weapons or atomic bomb is a very scary weapon that can never be used again.
Thank you very much, Lee-san. There are many questions, but I need to select. So, Lee-san, so where have you found strength to face the consequence of the nuclear detonation through your life? Does faith or spiritual belief have a role? この原爆の問題に向き合うというその力はリーさんの場合一体どこから来たのでしょう。何か信仰とか信条とかそういったものがですね役割を果たしたのか、どういうことでしょうか。
いえ、私は信仰も、何もありません。ただこの原爆の恐ろしさというものは自分が体験して黄色みがかった線香によって衣服から出た皮膚は全て焼き尽くされたんですから、この、原爆というものに対しては まだまだ私今年92歳になりますけども、片時としてそういう場面、あるいはそういう橋の上とかいろいろなとこで、あるいは友達に、あるいは亡くなっていかれた被爆者の方の話を聞くときに、本当にやはりこれは公正に話をしていかなきゃならないと同時に、生きている私、被爆体験をお話しすることは私の使命だと思ってやっております。
I'm not religious. I don't have any belief, but I feel that this experiencing this horrifying day and seeing the yellowish orange bright light in front of me, I'm 92 years old right now, but I could never forget that experience that I had. All the clothing was burned away with that one single bomb. And even to this day, I could never forget what happened. And there were so many people who passed away, and I think I'm destined to share these stories with you, and also to share and keep these stories, the past, to the future generations. And that's why I have been doing this testimony for many years.
Right. Another question. How long did it take to restore the city of Hiroshima after the bomb? この原爆が落ちてからですね、広島の町が復興するまでにどのぐらいの時間がかかったんでしょうか。
はっきり、覚えておりませんけども、私その時16歳でしたので、それから後の広島の復興というのは割と早かったと思います。というのは台風が来たその後の広島の復興、広島の復興といううちに、その当時朝鮮戦争が始まり、日本は特需景気を受けながら、そういうことからして、広島の復興も早かったし、日本の復興も早かったんじゃないかと思います。
I don't remember for sure exactly how long it took to recover, but I was 16 years old then, and I think it was rather quick for Hiroshima to recover, because there was a Korean War at that time, and Japan was experiencing economic growth, and due to that, Hiroshima and also Japan recovered quite quick from the scars of war.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. And the final question, one of the students says that community can be very important for managing these kind of traumatic experience. How did you begin to connect with other hibakusha, especially as a Korean? And how did this affect the way you became involved in the activism? 学生の一人がですね、このコミュニティの力、人のつながりの力というのは非常に重要だろうと。リーさんが他の被爆者の方々とつながってこの活動をしてきたというのはどういうところからだったんでしょうか。特に在日でいらっしゃるということで、他の被爆者との連携というのはどういうものだったんでしょうか。
そうですね、私はこの被爆体験というのを、お話を証言を始めたのは、2012年に、ピースボートに乗って世界を一周する旅によって初めて私はこの被爆体験を話をすることになります。それまでは私は一切一言も私の子供、家族、そして友達に私が被爆したっていうことを話したことはありません。お母さんが泣きながら私のウジ虫を取りながら韓国語で「チュゴラ」って「チュゴ死んでくれ」って涙を流してよってことを思うと、とても人にそういう 被爆体験なんて話をする気にもなれませんでしたし、完全にもう忘れてました。そして2012年ピースボートに乗り、出港の挨拶を私がしました。その時に初めて自分の本名を使いました。
The first time I had my testimony was in 2012, and that was when I got on Peace Boat to go around the world. And before 2012, getting on board, I had never ever shared my experience with my children, my family, nor my friends. And the experience of my mom crying and trying to remove maggots from my skin and saying "chigora," chigo, it means in Korean, please die. And I really couldn't share that experience, the trauma, with other people. I even forgot about that, what happened when I was at the childhood. But on 2012, when I got on Peace Boat, I was asked to give a message at the departure ceremony, and that's the first time I shared my experience with public, and that's when I started using my real Korean name.
そして出港の挨拶の時に、私の本名を生まれて初めてイ・ジョングンっていう言葉を出港の挨拶の終わりに話すことができました。それまで私は日本人であるということを、しかしじゃなくて、やはり私のルーツは韓国人だということで、最後にイ・ジョングン行ってきますと締めくくりました。
And that's when I used my real name, Lee Jong-gun, after I gave my speech at the departure ceremony. And before that, I had lived as Japanese, but I realized that my origin was Korean. And that's when I could realize myself that I have a root in Korea, and I use my real name.
Okay, thank you so much, Lee-san. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for questions, but also I'd like to thank all of you, the participants, for submitting such great and thoughtful ones. So to close our time with Lee-san, although maybe he's mentioned this a couple times a bit already, but I'd like to ask him for some final words or a final message for all of us here today. We've already touched on this a bit in today's program, but as you all know, there's currently the current news and current events are dominated by the war in Ukraine, and even part of that is the danger that a nuclear weapon might be used there in the conflict. So I'm sure I speak for all of us when I say that in this kind of dark days, hearing hibakusha's stories becomes even more poignant and meaningful. So based on that, Lee-san, do you have any final message for us here today? ではリさん、最近はウクライナのニュースとかなどなどありますけど、最近のニュースなどに踏まえた上で、私たちに最後のメッセージがあればお願いします。
そうですね、もう何をか言わん核兵器の廃絶ということと、核兵器禁止条約が、世界156カ国ですか、こうして参加いただいて署名をいただき、そして国連で、今年協議されることになるんですけども、どうして被爆国の日本、あるいは私の、被爆国じゃないけども韓国にしても、その国連に自分の国の名前をサインして、そしてこれに参加していただけないのか。どうしていろいろな問題もあるでしょうけども、それはのけといて、やはりこの核兵器禁止条約に対しては 絶対に世界の国の皆様が署名いただき、国連で協議し、そして核の廃絶を実現させていただくということを、私は今から死ぬまでこの問題は続くと思いますけども、絶対にそれを見て死にたいと思っております。
I have not much words to say, but eliminating nuclear weapons and this ratification of the TPNW is a very important event for me. And I still wonder why Japan or Korea and Japan being victimized by the only country victimized in the world by the atomic bomb is still not signed nor ratifying this TPNW. And of course, I'm sure there are many problems that the government cannot sign or ratify these, but I really truly wish that they would sign and also ratify the TPNW. And I really hope to see that happen while I'm still alive.
Okay, thank you so much, Lee-san, for your message and for sharing your experience with us here today. So everyone, let's give him a final round of applause. ありがとうございました。本当に。
ありがとうございました。
So,
Thank you very much. はい。